What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Wellness, presented by South Florida Wellness Network. I don't know where Kayla is, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's the third week in a row Kayla's not here. No, I'm kidding. She's busy. She's doing a lot of stuff here for the organization, a lot of important stuff. So sadly, she couldn't be with us next week, but today, I mean. But hopefully next week she'll be back for a very special episode that we have planned. But in her place, we decided to bring two very special guests. Today's episode, as you saw in the title, is well, actually, I don't know what I'm going to title this. If I'm being honest, like it's going to be something in regards to celebrating Black History Month.
It's about Black History Month. We're not sure if we want to title that because it's kind of cliche.
Yeah,
I guess
we definitely want to try to be a little more creative. So I'll think about it in the edit. But we brought some very special people to give perspective today.
For sure.
And I think it's best if we just let each and every one of you introduce yourselves. My name is Christian, my co-host over there.
Hello, Mykel.
And if you want to go first, and then we can go to you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Martine Pierre, a peer specialist here at South Florida Wellness Network.
And I'm Albrielle McFadden. You can call me Abby for short, and I'm a youth life coach here.
Awesome.
Sauce. So today's episode is going to be, like we said, celebrating Black History Month. And it's interesting because you don't really get to see a lot of that in February. At least for me this year, I didn't see a lot of it this year. It was kind of the only context that I saw it in this year was in jokes. It's like, for example, I was on TikTok, and a guy was talking about a movie, right? And they kill off a Black character, and then the guy jokes, "Oh, not on Black History Month," right? But that's the only context. So I'm curious to hear what are you guys' perspective on the fact that of this holiday? You know, this month-long holiday where we're celebrating Black history, pioneers of great advances in society from the Black community, stuff like that.
Well, first off, obviously, I want you guys to explain your story really quick, and then give us your perspective on Chris's question, because I think it's important to know your guys' background. Like, I remember before we started the conversation, you were saying how you're originally from Haiti, correct?
Both my parents.
Both your parents.
I was born
So you would have a completely different perspective than me, and so is Abby. So if you guys don't mind, if you could share your backgrounds or a little bit of your story, a quick little 2 minutes about who you are, where you're from, and what makes you you.
You want me to go first?
If that makes you.
Okay. So both of my parents were born in Haiti. One of my grandmothers is Dominican. So growing up, I never considered myself Black American. I always considered myself a Haitian American. So, and unfortunately, like I was discussing, there is, I think, a lot of divide in the Black cultures, and I wish it was more unity. But with just growing up Haitian, I just it's just been kind of also a twist in having kind of embarrassment too for being Haitian when I was younger, because we were picked on in the Black schools.
Yeah,
and
there's definitely. I mean, I'm not Haitian, but I've definitely seen like you're saying, there's almost a hierarchy of Black people.
Yes.
And people will be like almost let's say light skin versus black skin,
Yes.
darker skin, or Haitians versus Nigerian born or African American. So there's always been that divide, and I agree there definitely needs to be a little bit more of a togetherness with it, because at the end of the day we're all Black. So how about you, Abby?
For me, my father was born in South Carolina. My mother born in Georgia here. So I was identified as African American pretty much, but I feel like I relate more to the Black American, because I really don't know about the bloodline of my family, because I just know, even down to my grandparents, they were born in America too. So
Their background is African, or what's their background? Is your parents?
Grandma, she was also born on my mom's side. She was born in Georgia.
What about their background, their ethnicity wise, or you don't know?
I don't know.
Gotta get some 23
Yeah,
years
yeah.
up in
Yeah.
here.
Like you don't know if like there's a Jamaican lineage or.
I get asked all the time if I'm like Caribbean or
No,
something.
I'm asking because I was the same way for a long period of my life, and
Yeah.
I tell people I have no idea. I still tell people to this day, like they're asking me what am I, I'm like I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
a bunch of different things, but like for the most part, I could tell them I'm African American, and my
Right.
dad's background is from Africa. You know,
Yeah.
so because some people say African America, but their background is Jamaican, and that
Exactly.
doesn't line up.
From what I was told, I know there's some type of Native American lineage down there, but from what side, I'm not for sure. But I've been wanting to do like the DNA
Gotcha.
stuff. But I was just pretty much raised as like your basic American girl.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say I was, hopefully this is not coming off like weird, but like how I was raised was pretty much I was in like a predominantly like white school. Like even when I danced too, and like my studio was just a lot of
Did you feel like an Oreo growing up?
yes, I
Okay.
got called that a lot.
Sure. I mean, I
like,
did too. That's
yeah,
fine.
it's like why do you tell me
Oreo
that?
is black people that have white tendencies.
Yeah.
Or white personalities or white
Yeah.
voices or whatever they'd like
Damn,
to.
I never heard of that
refer-
before. That's
you never heard of
crazy.
that?
Really?
Interesting.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I've been called an Oreo plenty of times in my
Yeah,
life.
I'm just like
Yeah.
so I don't like relate to like a lot of the
Stereotypical black things.
exactly. And I'm just like, what's that? What's that? Like, you know what that is? Like your black card's revoked and all that. And I'm like, I don't know what that is.
That's
I wasn't-
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had that to me like so many times because I didn't watch a certain movie and I'm just like I just wasn't raised.
Yeah. I think
like
every
that.
culture has that little bit of that. 'Cause
Absolutely.
You're Spanish. You know how it is.
Absolutely.
Let's say
Yeah.
it's Spanish culture if you don't have some of those.
I'll tell you.
know-
I'll tell you what that is for.
Give me an
for-
example.
for
Exactly. I didn't want to make
Hispanic
one because
people.
I didn't want to.
I got you. It's the Hispanic or Latino kids who don't speak Spanish.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what we call those? No sabo kids.
100%.
No sé in Spanish means I don't know.
Mm.
So it's common that you would hear somebody who's not good at Spanish who say instead of saying no sé, they say no sabo, which is a jokey way of saying I don't know.
They
right?
called my brothers gringos and they're full blood Mexican
There you go.
because they didn't speak Spanish.
But that's kind of what I'm saying. Is
Yeah.
that the gringos is another. It's
Yeah.
another one, right? Gringos is a word used in Hispanic communities and Latino communities to refer to white people,
Mhm.
right? And I let me tell you something. Those words are tossed around like nothing.
No, of course.
Like I've had my fair share of people call me gringo.
Yeah.
In Puerto
like an
Rico,
Oreo, like,
I'm
I
Puerto
don't know.
Rican,
Yeah.
right? And it is a little bit different than South America. But in Puerto Rico, I've had friends come up to me and be like, "Yo, you're American because you were born in California," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm Puerto Rican."
Mhm.
And like the same thing when they find out that my biological father was Salvadorian, not Puerto Rican. They're like, "Oh, so you're Salvadorian?" I'm like, "No, I'm Puerto Rican. I don't know anything about that culture. I don't identify with any aspect of that
Yeah.
culture. I'm Puerto Rican."
Mhm.
And there's always these weird looks, like what?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's always going to be those
Latinos.
biases.
We got those words too, and we throw them like nothing.
Yeah.
So
There's always going to be those biases within cultures. But back to Chris's original question, like, how do you guys feel about, like, you know, maybe it not having such a predominant, like, case, like people are speaking for as much nowadays? Like, obviously, we know Black history is something that's always going to be need to have a voice for. But it seems like, as Chris has said, there's not as much representation or, you
Yeah,
know,
man.
people talking about it. What do you guys feel about that? Or have you not seen that? Maybe you feel like you see it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but real quick, last night I was having a conversation about that with my fiance. We were talking about how in her school, she's a teacher.
Okay.
In her school, they weren't talking about it. Like she was one of the few teachers who was actually trying to, because they do reading excerpts,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where instead of like opening the book and like going through a curriculum, they take a day where they just like read an excerpt from an important voice and from our history. And this month specifically, she's been trying to elevate a lot more Black voices, right? Because it's Black History Month.
Right.
Sure enough, she was like, she was explaining that her classrooms are majority Black students, and none of them knew any of the things that she was talking about.
Wow.
People didn't know about MLK. People didn't know about
Wow.
the one from the bus.
Rosa Parks.
Thank you, Rosa
Yeah.
Parks. They didn't know who those historically important people were. You know, they've never heard of Jim Crow before.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I think in general,
And-
to
and-
be honest, kids are just getting dumber.
Yeah.
like, ouch.
Like outside of color, like straight up, I think kids are not being taught
But you
anything.
Know, but you know
They're
what's
not.
wild? I grew up in Puerto Rico, right? I went to school in Puerto Rico. I was taught those things in Puerto Rico. By fourth grade, I knew who Martin Luther, Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X were. That's why I have a big heart about like talking about these topics and elevating Black voices, because I grew up being taught of the importance of talking about it.
Right.
The I forget her name, but the woman who the mathematicians who were able to send the first rocket ship
Oh
to
yeah, I've read the names too.
to space, right?
Yeah,
From
yeah.
the Hidden Figures movie.
Yeah.
It's like I grew up listening to all these stories, and to come here and be like, oh yeah, they're not. A lot of kids are not learning about that, either, no matter what race. And I'm like, in Puerto Rico, you of all places, like they taught me that from a very young age. We
Yeah.
have
Yeah, I was-
Spanish books about Martin Luther King,
Oh,
and that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
I was telling Christian earlier too. Going to my high school, it was predominantly white as well, Christian private, but it was nothing on Martin Luther King Day. It wasn't even said like why we were off that day. So that became an issue, and I brought it up, and I started. They allowed me to say his speech. One of his famous speeches I did every year. But when I
I
left,
love that.
and we did we had like a little area where we could post, information, about, leaders and people that create, so many inventions and things like that. We had like a little area, but once we left, it stopped. And there's nothing you can really do when it's a private
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, that's
So-
tough.
I have a question. So one of my favorite actors of all time, Morgan Freeman, he
Oh,
was
yeah.
asked how does he feel about Black History Month? Guess what he said? I hate it.
Same.
And I feel the same way because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, what is Black History Month about? It's about like highlighting all the things we went through and trying to like speak about the things we were oppressed from and all these things, which 100% are valid and they need to be spoken about and taught in books and stuff like that. And we need to make sure we have that knowledge in us. But we don't need a whole month where people pity us or give us extra treatment or anything like that. It's just so absurd to me. There's no White History Month. There's no Latino History Month.
Well, I was gonna combat you on that, because there is.
There is, but there's
Hispanic
really,
Heritage
it's not
Month.
the same as like a Black History Month on
And
a
I'll-
holiday.
and I'll
it's
give you
it's
that.
something Spanish people celebrate, but it's not a
Sure.
holiday. And that's what I'm saying. If you have your Black people have their celebration of their history, they have their national independence days or whatever, perfectly fine. Haitians have it all the time.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. That's celebrating your culture. Same as Latinos. But if we're having a Black History Month where there's people of, again, that don't even agree, don't even like each other, again, have all these biases towards each other, but it's all about us, it makes no sense to me. And it's pushing forward a false narrative, in my opinion. So like, what do you guys think about like, do you think it's more of a negative or a positive that we have a Black History Month? And you can have your own opinion on it.
Yeah.
Because I think there's definitely positives on it,
Yeah.
but I don't think they outweigh the negatives, in my opinion.
Right now, I feel like just as the years go on, I see it more negatively because I feel like it's something that is forced. Like, it's not like people genuinely want to celebrate.
Think of the
it.
kneel. Remember the kneel or
Yeah.
in soccer, they did it for a long time. They did the don't speak before the game start.
Yeah.
And I remember for a long time, like they were doing it. And then a lot of Black players came out and they're like, this is pointless.
Yeah.
They're still racist.
Yeah.
They still chant at us. They
Yeah.
still throw stuff at us.
It's
like,
nothing-
what is
nothing's
changing
changing.
here? You know?
Exactly. So I just feel like, sometimes like even in like the workplaces, sometimes like you have that one day of like, okay, Black people, woo, celebrate, and then the next day it's just forgotten. So
Yeah.
it was like, what was the point if this stuff is still going to continue?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I kind of just see it like just like you said, like what's the point like at this time?
Yeah. It's such a hard. Go ahead. I don't want to speak too much.
I was thinking like all year, whether it's
It's every day.
Hispanic, whatever person's
Yeah.
background, just acknowledging, okay,
Yeah.
throughout the year, whether
And
it's
that's what I think it
mathematics,
boils down
medicine.
to. Yeah. It
I mean,
shouldn't
it's
be
just-
one month where We have to get together and then celebrate these people. We
Right.
should collectively throughout the year understand that black people, white people, Chinese people, whatever,
Right.
all races have created things that we use every day, and we're grateful for
Literally.
them.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm a big advocate of black culture because I love everything they bring. I love the music, I love the style, I love dressing, I love everything about black culture. But there's a lot of ignorant things that black people do that I don't appreciate either. Same with other races. Does that make me, you know, against black people? No.
And I think that's the divide with Haitians, because in the Haitian culture, it was like, we don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's a black, don't call me black because I don't do that. And
Because
then it can be a lot of
Exactly.
like, prejudice
Yeah.
between
100%.
cultures too, because it's like,
And they don't want to be given that rep of don't call me that because of
Right.
the reputation that comes with it.
Right.
Of like not saying all black people steal, not saying all black people are criminals, but that's the reputation that comes with it.
Yep.
When you do these things or whatever. Like I wear baggy clothes, I go to Walmart and stuff like that. People probably think I'm a certain way, but I'm the nicest kid in the world, you know? But that's sometimes the reputation that comes with you, and especially if you have black skin. And that's the world that realistically that black people live in,
right.
you know?
And I was telling Christian too, there's like some artists or like famous people that won't tell you that they're Haitian. And to me, that
100%.
that
That
bothers
is
me.
Yeah.
so
Because it's
true.
like,
Yep.
why are you so embarrassed to say you're Haitian?
100%. It was like when I was in middle school, it was like not a thing. It was not fashionable,
Right.
you know, to be Haitian. Because
Right.
I had a ton of Haitian friends. I went to Perry Middle. Most of the people there were Haitian.
Okay.
But it turned out most of the people you ask them, they're not Haitian, you know?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I'll never get it. One of my best friends is Haitian. I call him, I don't want to say it because it's not a good word in Haitian. But one of my best friends to this day, and like, I'm going to his wedding soon, and like, there's never been like, oh, because you're Haitian and I'm African American, I don't want to be your friend kind of thing.
Right.
And it's just such a backwards way of thinking, you know? And it just
Yeah.
all comes down to biases and people always kind of wanting to put their thing first,
Yeah.
you know? So,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird
Yeah.
thing.
You know, it's funny because in Latino cultures, it's the same thing. I'm just thinking about growing up in Puerto Rico, how we would always joke about the darker skinned people because in Puerto Rico you'll find everything. You'll find
Yeah.
from like Wesley Snipes black to like
100%.
European white. You know?
100%.
And I remember that was a big thing we would deal with, where a lot of people would make fun of El Negrito, you
Yeah.
know, the little black kid, in growing up in Puerto Rico, and like that was always wild for me because what people in Puerto Rico always seem to forget is that we all share the same DNA in one way, shape, or form. We all are part African, we're all part Native, and we're all part
Yeah.
Spaniard.
Yeah.
The pigmentation just means that they got a little more of that than we
Yeah.
did, but
Right.
we all share the same three roots.
Right.
So it was always wild how they would make fun of that when we all come from the same place, you know?
Yeah.
We're all part
I mean, look
African.
at Dominican Republic and Haiti. They're the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
island.
Same thing.
Yeah.
They're the same island. I've
Yeah.
met
Same thing.
hundreds of
And
Dominicans
I-
it will be the worst thing in the world if you tell them they're Haitian. And it's
Yeah.
like, bro, do you realize you're on the same island? If you trace back your people, you were probably 100% Haitian,
Right.
and they're probably 100%
right.
Dominican.
And obviously
They're
I can't
going
speak.
through a lot right now.
Yeah, they are.
100%. Yeah.
I can't speak for those islands specifically, but I just remember that was always a very big thing.
Yeah.
You know, because simply because of their the color of their skin. And so it's weird because growing up and hearing these black stories and Jim Crow era and all these marches and movements, I was like, there was always that thought on the back of my mind of like, but why are we still treating people like that, even in Puerto Rico or here in America?
Yeah.
Like, and that's where I'm like, you know, obviously I come from the perspective of Hispanic Heritage Month, right? I personally enjoy celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month a lot. That's like one of my favorite times of the year. I think it's November, September, something like that. When it comes around, I normally get a little more like excited about elevating Latino voices, you know, and so that's why, for me at least, it's a bit strange to hear that perspective because. And again, it's all based on how we grew up, right? But being Latino was so ingrained in my personality. So when that time of year comes around, I get extra excited, right?
Yeah.
To celebrate and elevate Latino voices. Like every single time Hispanic Heritage Month comes around, and like I'll try to like talk about like Latino actors that I love or Latino films that I love, you know, Latino music that I'm in love with. So I definitely want to get into that a little bit with you guys. Growing up, from what I'm hearing, it's not as impactful, but it still happens every year. So what are things that realistically as a society we need to do for it to make sense? Because I don't think Black History Month is going to quote unquote go away.
Yeah, it's not. for
But
sure.
if it's going to keep happening, there needs to be a way to elevate what it is. Because based on what I'm hearing, what it is right now is not working.
I
And
mean, I don't want it to go away.
exactly.
I want everyone to be recognized no matter
Yeah.
what their race is. But unfortunately, enslavement happened, like the
Yeah.
Holocaust. Like in Haiti, there was enslavement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Toussaint Louverture, he helped them get their freedom because it was happening in Africa too. Africans were enslaving
It's
Africans.
happening right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Africans were enslaving Africans. So
Yeah.
it was black people enslaving black people too.
Yeah,
There you go.
it's happening right now.
So yeah, so it was a lot of, so just I don't think that should be forgotten that
Right.
people went through that and like to honor that, but I don't know if that necessarily like he was saying, like when you talk about a month, should you do it for
It's
everyone?
just funny to me, like-
other
Yeah.
cultures.
So like
Well-
think about it. Like, okay, January 31st, blah 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 blah. February 1st. Oh, let's celebrate black people, And then February 28th comes around. All right, we're done.
Yeah.
It's just such a weird
Well,
concept to me.
I like that. Remember
it
our
makes no
staff meeting?
sense to me.
Remember our staff meeting when we saw that little clip?
Right.
Yeah.
The guy said something that I still remember, and it kind of impacted me. It's like, until we see actual change, we kind of have to keep talking about Black History
Yeah.
Month.
Yeah.
Because he asks it in the video. He's like, why do we still celebrate Black History Month, right? When we've kind of evolved from that and we're trying to like maneuver and modernize everything in our country. Because there's still people that are suffering some of those same challenges that they were suffering back then. Maybe
Yeah.
not as openly as we've seen, but still do, And it's like, if we still see these things happening, then is separating time to specifically elevate that, is that still important? You kind of see where I'm going at. It's like, I understand.
Is there a point of doing it?
Yeah,
I get it.
I
Yeah.
understand your point. Where it kind of becomes kind of like a turn on the switch, and then when it's done, turn off the switch, and then we don't talk about it for the rest of the year.
But for us as black people, it's like a 365 thing. Like we
Exactly.
always
Yeah.
like
That's what
me
they
having a son.
100%.
When
Right.
me having a
100%.
son, I'm like, you gotta, or even myself, I know I have to vote because I know in this country at one time we couldn't vote.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what it
and-
should come down to, a 365 thing, like you're saying. Like, I'm turning down a song and it's by a black artist. I'm like, I love this. This is black
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
This is something I love. That's something every day you should be able to, and that should be, you should be able to say as a white person.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for black people being alive so I can have music like this. Thank you for James
Yeah.
Brown and Michael Jackson and all these great artists as a white
Yeah.
person, if you want to say that. Whatever. That should be able to say. And it should be able to, a black person should be able to say the same thing
Yeah.
about a Billy Nelson or whatever country
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing. There should be no boxes
Right.
of how we're going to praise or give people appreciation. It should just, we give people appreciation.
Yeah. Well,
And that's
that's
my thing
true.
about the history
Right.
month. And that's why I'm like this about it. I don't think
Right.
it should be gone, but I don't think it should. It's not that big of a deal to me.
But at the same time, we need to be somewhat realistic about it, right? We live in a country where that's realistically not something that is going to happen until we do use our voice to try to say like, hey.
100%.
So in the meantime, wouldn't taking some time to elevate those voices, no matter what race, but elevating those voices, could it not then be somewhat beneficial to have a specific time of month or time of the year where we proactively try to elevate it, maybe more than we should do throughout the rest of the year, but use that time to elevate those black voices when throughout the rest of the year it wouldn't happen. Am I making sense? Like,
Yeah.
like what I'm trying to go with is like, until that change happens, wouldn't it be beneficial to have that time to elevate black voices. The same way that until Latino voices are like seen as a common thing and there's no more racism and all that, that's not going to happen
Well,
right
okay,
now.
so the question is, until what? Like, we're a majority in this country. Like, black people are not minorities anymore. We're
No,
like,
and I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is until that perspective shift happens.
but what
where,
perspective shift? That's
well,
my question. Like,
there's still racism. There's
100%,
still
but
hate.
that's always going to be taught in every, like, racism comes from birth, or not from birth, from their parents teaching their kids to be hateful, and that happens in every country across the nation. You go to South America, there are racist people all over the world.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't change that, and the idea that people are gonna one day just be not racist because we're having Black History Months and Spanish History, it's crazy to me. And that's the reality I live in because I've been in the world for almost 30 years now. And I've seen, like, I've lived in black neighborhoods. I've lived in Spanish neighborhoods. Now I live in a white neighborhood. I see how people are, and people are always going to be selective of their tribes.
Yeah.
They're going to hang out with their people.
Yeah.
And that's how it is always going to be, man. And, like, you got to find the people that aren't like that aren't hateful. And it's not a majority of people that are hateful. It's a minority. 10%, probably more than, probably 10, 15% are truly hateful or elitist. And by elitist, I mean their race is the best no matter what. Like, I'm a white person, white people are the best. I'm black people are the best. I'm Chinese people. And that's the wrong way to think.
Right.
And that happens over a vast majority of people. And it comes down to, like, a balance of elitism and proud. Because I know you're proud to be a Latino. And that's awesome. And I commend you for that. And that's how you should be. And the same way with me as a black person. And I don't know about you ladies. I'm sure you feel that same way as a black woman. You should be proud to be who you are, but you shouldn't think, "Oh, I'm the greatest because of my color."
I agree,
Or
100%.
who I am or my nation.
I don't hold myself like that.
And that's the thing.
Not at all.
And that's the thing. I feel like we're always moving the goalposts so we could score. You know what I'm saying? Kind of thing. And it's we're never gonna be able to all score. We just gotta accept reality and be the best person we can with that. I think.
Actually, I like
And
that,
it's a dark way to think, maybe, because it's very like
realistically,
yeah.
I left it.
But that's my perspective as a black male. That's why I'm saying it.
Like, it's dark, but isn't it real?
Yeah.
Like,
And bro, this is my perspective as a black male who's had it hard at one point, but I have a privilege now. There's people that never had privilege in their whole life as black male in America, and then look at other countries. Go to Africa. There's people that from the day you're born, you're starving until you die. So, like, it's hard for me to speak upon things like Black History Month and stuff when it does nothing for people like that. So it's just
interesting. Okay.
Again, it's very dark and very like, oh, this doesn't happen. This is never gonna work, and that's not a way to progress things either. So
that makes sense. It really does. So what then would be the response that we should have?
what do you ladies think?
I mean, and one thing, let me just say, I donate to overseas and like to help people that, you know, not saying that I'm better than. I just feel like it's a collective effort
100%.
to help people, no matter what race they are, that are suffering. And so I definitely get, you know, like what you're saying. And I don't like to have pride. Like, I just rather like try to humble myself as much as possible. Because I don't want to feel like I'm better than anyone else.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know? Like, I don't want anyone to feel that impression, although I want to have self-esteem and self-confidence.
Yeah.
And with when you're starting to raise a child, I think that you do feel that pressure of like putting them in certain schools because you want them to have what the majority have.
I remember my parents didn't want me to go to Miramar High School, so they put a fake address so I can go to West Broward, which is from a black predominant school to a white predominant school.
So I do feel guilty in that sense, that I felt like I had to go to that extreme. But, you know, I taught them, you know, it's good to work for someone, but at the end of the day, if you can do something for yourself and make a mark for yourself, that's powerful.
100%.
And that's what he's doing. And he inspires me, you know, but I do feel guilty, you know, to say, I wanted him to live in a certain zip code and go to a certain school because I wanted him to have the same opportunities as the so-called, you know, people in the country that
And that's the
that
thing.
run
And
the
those are the
country.
things that black people deal with that you don't really see. Like,
Yeah.
especially black parents, like you're saying,
Yeah.
people don't see that there's a struggle within of the dealing within your personal self
Yeah.
of I want my kid to have better than I did.
Yeah.
So I obviously can't put him in the same circumstances that I was in. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna move him over here,
Yeah.
and it is what it is. I want better for my kid, and if people got to say something about it, it is what it is.
Yeah,
And that's the thing that a lot of people have to deal with, especially high-profile celebrities, LeBron James, like all those types of people.
Yeah.
They have to hear stuff like that all the time. I remember seeing like something about like Bronny was dating like a white girl or
Yeah.
something, and a bunch of people were on him. Which I don't care who you date. If you're black, white, whatever, you could date whatever color you
Yeah.
want. But it just shows like the people that don't want that happening. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's racism.
Yeah.
It's racism at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's such a funny thing,
Yeah.
like that people will always continue to deal with. But I don't know.
Yeah.
So what about you, Abby? What do you think? Like, what realistically speaking, if what we need to start doing is talking about it throughout the year.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that perspective? What would you say would be something people who want to elevate Black voices should do?
I feel like it should just be educated every day throughout like schools, throughout the workplace, throughout just everywhere. Because my mom always says like Black history is every day. We use things every day that Black people made.
Yep.
So I feel like it shouldn't go unacknowledged. That word, yeah, unacknowledged. So I just feel like education is just the best tool right now because the more you know, it's just yeah.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah. Let's bring up one example. Let's take Pride Month versus Black History Month. Look at the backing of that versus a Black History Month.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
But
what
it still was prejudice. They go through a lot of
100%.
prejudice to the
Right.
point
And I will
of
never
murder.
be against. I'm not
They go through a lot.
100%.
They
100%.
go through a lot.
100%. I agree with
Yeah.
you. But look at the difference of the amount of effort, money, campaigning, and stuff that goes into that.
But think about that for a second. The reason there's so much campaigning and effort is because it comes from that community.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
True.
Oof.
And
that's another
that's my big
conversation.
question to you
That's
right
another
there. And that's
conversation.
exactly my question to you. And we even talked about it here at South Florida Wellness because they were talking about pride topics, and we were like, why are they being brought up so much? And I was because those people actually care about their groups.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the conversation that we're having here, and that question brings is, why don't Black people put more effort into celebrating Black History Month themselves?
Interesting.
If you look at the people that are putting the Black History Month and all these things in, they're usually from white companies, big
Yeah.
conglomerate companies that are owned by white people. There's not a lot of Black-owned companies that are saying things like this. There's not a lot of celebrities that are Black coming out and speaking about things like this.
Yeah.
And that's where the lack of education comes in the Black society. Like, let's say if I have Black heroes, like I look up to Black people, if they're posting things about these people, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, MLK, Malcolm X, I'm going to be inspired to look into those people and want to learn about them. But if they're not, then that's kind of how it is now with social media.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're
Yeah.
posting about, whatever their idols are doing, they're going to do.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you mentioned that because again, going back to Hispanic heritage, like,
Very exactly.
like
Spanish
I
people are
follow a whole bunch of Latino people who
they're
just,
on top of culture. They're on
Yeah.
top of the culture.
They post everything. They actively share resources. That's the whole reason why I found those songs and those movies, because I saw a celebrity that I follow on Instagram talk about it.
And another thing too is the big difference
That's
is
wild.
Spanish culture goes back to banging on drums, doing stuff like that. Spanish traditions. Black culture in America comes back to not really anything. It's
Yeah.
fashion, music, stuff like that. Black culture is nationwide, cultural wide, African countries, a bunch of different countries. That's not something that is ever pushed in Black culture. Ever. Like very rarely. You saw it with like Black Panther, stuff like that. Very rarely you'll see them push stuff like that. And when they do, look how successful it is.
Very
Yeah, one of the
Because
biggest movies.
we want a positive meme out there for ourselves. Some like a Black superhero that has its own country with superhero Black. Like, why wouldn't we want that? But that's
Right.
not the things we get all the time. We get a lot of like black people, like black culture music, which is a lot of, I love black music.
Yeah.
I love black. It's my favorite. Hip hop is my favorite
Yeah.
genre by far.
Yeah.
Like by far. But it's a lot of stuff that it shouldn't be said and
Yeah.
is not good for our culture and not good for our communities and not good for the future of our people. But it is what it is, and it's all done to make profit. And who owns these companies?
That's
Yeah.
wild, dude.
Yeah.
So-
I feel like
Wild.
too,
That's it.
but the Black history too, like going back all the way to like slave days, we lack the resources, we lack the education. So I feel like that comes hand in hand with today. I feel like a lot of Black people don't have the access or the resources, even the knowledge about what the real history is, because most
Yeah.
of our history is wiped out.
Yeah. I had
So,
sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, you're good.
I had
you're
like a
good.
really controversial take, and I was like, obviously it's not as bad as it used to be, but like back then in slavery, black people were getting manipulated. It's the same thing that's happening nowadays. We're still getting manipulated, just in a different way.
Yeah.
We're buying into this whole thing, this whole black culture that is created by not really black people. It's created by music and all this stuff that's created by higher up people that aren't black people. You know what I'm saying? Because you ask Nigerian Americans, or you ask, I saw like a study, it was Nigerian Americans from African countries. Those populations come over to here and they do so well in America.
Yeah.
And then
True.
again, those are those same people that don't want to be represented as African American at all. They want to be called Africans.
Yep.
They don't want to be called African Americans because it comes with that rep. So it's just like, I don't know. It's something I feel crazy
It's
about.
deep. It goes
Yeah, it goes super deep. And Chris said it earlier. We can have a 3-hour conversation about this because there's so many things to touch on and
Yeah.
talk about. But it's just,
So, I want us to pivot real quick because there is one more topic that we kind of talked about before the podcast, which was the idea of unity in our own cultures and how we don't, sadly, obviously I'm coming from the Latino perspective, but you guys can share your own perspective. Sadly, there's not a lot of unity amongst minority cultures. We talked about it earlier, like we're still racist against each other. We're still hateful against each other. Like I grew up listening to people constantly talk about how they hate people from this country. From
my
that
brothers
other
are
country.
Mexicans, probably the most hated on Spanish culture of all time.
Like a lot of people in the Latino community make fun of Mexican people.
It's just
you
like
know?
the go-to. Are you a
Right.
Mexican? White people too, if
Yeah.
you think about it.
So there's all this hate coming from our own communities. So I want to hear from you guys, based on your experience. Have you ever experienced that? And moreover, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely experienced, like you mentioned, like the hierarchy of Black people and stuff was like I would like not get made fun of, but I would get called bougie because I never taken the city bus before, and it's just like I just was privileged enough to not, have to do that. So it's just, how do I say it? Like it's the hierarchy of like the rich Black person versus the person who lives in the hood or something, and that's a big thing amongst Black people. It's like you were raised differently, and people just hold themselves like, oh, I'm much better than you because I wasn't raised that way, which is really not the case. You all come from the same background. We all have the same experiences, especially when it comes to racism. So it's like, why do you think you're better because you live in this part versus somebody living somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Martine?
No, I agree with what she's saying. I think as far as unity is concerned, I think there is still a lot of division. I think hopefully it's better now. I don't know, but growing up, I know like between Bahamian, Jamaicans, and like Haitians, things like that, there was a lot of divide too, because I think a lot of people were kind of in the work field, like kind of looking for jobs and feeling like it was a competition for jobs, like in the medical field, like when my mom did. But she gained a lot of friends that were not Haitian. So I think it's a matter of perspective. I think, like he said, it's something that you have to deal with. But if you can be that source of change or that source of balance where you're not disliking somebody just because of where they came from.
Right.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
It's all about balance. I mean, at the end of the day, if I act to certain one, like let's say if I act as I'm in the middle. Realistically, I'm not black or white. I'm like both. So there has always been times in my life where I was not black enough for black people.
Yeah.
I wasn't white enough for white people.
Yes.
And then it
That's
came
wild.
to a point where I'm like, if I'm just trying to satisfy everybody else, when am I going to make time for myself to be happy?
Right.
So that whole thing of like colorism and like
Yes,
people liking
colorism.
white, like light skins more than dark skins, and like all that stuff is just a matter of like either racism and like some form of hatred that they've learned coming up, and so they've had this personal bias of themselves, or maybe it's just a preference. You know, and that's kind of what I chalk it up to. So like I try not to think about it sometimes. It is what it is, because at the end of the day, some people, like I said, people are gonna stay in their tribes.
Yeah.
They're gonna stay in their cliques. They're gonna be comfortable with the people they are comfortable with. Most of my friends are minorities. You know, does that mean I'm racist towards white people? I don't like white people. No, it just means a lot of the things that I deal with or I go through, or music and culture and similarities I have, are going to be a lot more in common with those people.
Mhm.
And that's just how the world works. And until people learn to realize that people are just going to be different, there's always going to be this racism. You know, when we learn to embrace everybody's culture, you know, regardless of months or days or specific times, when we just embrace everybody's culture every day, that's when things will go forward. But I don't think that'll ever happen. That's just, you know,
So-
a utopian world.
We I guess I'll reveal it here. We have on our schedule an episode where we're going to talk about racism, and it's been an episode that's been on my mind. I've been trying to really figure out, because I don't know exactly what route to take in terms of like
Let's go
just bash people who are racist.
Let's go get a racist.
let's go get a
Interview
racist,
'em.
right? But
I've met a racist before.
I've
Not a bad person.
Yeah, I've met
Just
I've
has
met
preferences.
racists.
It's weird. It's definitely weird
it's
for my
strange.
mind to understand, because it's your preferences are so strongly rooted. His preferences so strongly root the way he lives his life, which is kind of weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand it. You know, like, all right, I'm gonna say some controversial things. You know, like,
Yeah,
as a black person, if I see someone, you know, like dressed up in a dark hoodie or something out at night, am I gonna be scared? Yes. You know, like
Right.
that just happens as a person, you know, like it's just such a, sorry. Like, I completely forgot my point. My head went gone. Sorry guys. My ADD clicked in.
Yeah, there you go. Well, what I was trying to go at is we're gonna have this episode coming up soon, and I've been trying to find different routes of conversation, because one of the things about being such a experience ingrained in minority cultures is racism, and how you're often seen as the other, right?
Yeah.
So I want to open up a discussion here to kind of start to close up the podcast. I guess what I want to go to is like, have you ever been impacted by racism? And furthermore, as the next question, what are some things that you would say could be ways to combat racism? Because I feel that racism is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. And I feel that we don't often have an opportunity to openly talk about racism without people getting uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's an
Right.
uncomfortable topic.
But
yeah.
but right now there's nobody here that like can stop us.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's do it. But I really want to hear you guys' perspective on not only if you've been through racist experiences, but at the same time, what would you recommend people who are just like trying their best to do better? Not from a I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to say sorry for being racist. It's not that. What I'm going at is more like there's people out there who are trying their best to do good and to do right and to not be hateful in general. So what would you say to, based on your experiences, how to better that situation?
For me, I have two actually. So like being a dancer, I go on a lot of auditions and stuff. And right now with the music industry and just like that, they look for a lot of like white passing Hispanics or like lighter black people. And literally I didn't get the part because I was just darker. And even though I probably wasn't the best dancer, but I probably was a strong dancer, but because of my skin tone, they just didn't choose me. I didn't look the part for the video. And I feel like with that, for the industry wise, I feel like it's just educate yourself
What
all around. Just
What if I have a
educate.
controversial take? What if they wanted someone in preference to you, and they chose someone that was less of? Let's say you were yourself, right?
Right.
And they wanted someone that was you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you were a worse dancer than a lighter color person, but they chose you. How would you feel about that same situation?
I would say have me and the girl battle it out. Let's
Okay.
see. Like,
Let's go.
yeah,
Okay.
Like, if you want to go,
And I only ask that question not to say that you don't
Yeah,
believe
of
that truly
course,
and you don't
yeah.
believe in fairness, because a lot of people do want fairness, you know? But a lot of people don't even realize the situations until it's kind of reversed, you know?
Right,
And you
right.
felt that way, right?
Yeah.
But that girl might not even, she might even think twice about it because she's not in that reverse situation. And I'm taking you out of the situation.
Yeah.
Let's say you, like the person that was you might have a hatred or a personal feeling towards that person when there's no reason for it.
Right.
And that's where these hatreds it's towards colors come in.
Exactly.
And that's where it comes. That's where stuff like that comes in. And it's not because of us. It's because of, like you said, the way preferences and situations are built.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a hard thing because it's just always gonna be a situation in life. Like like I'm saying, it could be, you know, one day we're a cheer color. The thing is, why I get where your point is because it predominantly is that way.
Yeah.
It usually is that way,
Yeah,
where
if you
it's
look at,
always
all
feels
the
like
freaking like award shows and stuff, like you'll rarely see like a girl like my color,
100%.
darker, like performing on stage in the artist. It's always like,
and that's why I made a point to touch on it, because light skins in like Hollywood and stuff are seen as like a better thing because maybe it is closer seen to white people as more familiar or whatever.
exactly.
But there are a lot of people that really admire black people. Like I see it all the time. Like you'll see like very beautiful black women as models, and people will post pictures of them on Twitter, and you'll see the amount of love that comes from them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of inspiring because, like, you see, you're so used to that colorism and that's so used to people being so hatred.
I stopped dancing for a while after that because I was just like, if they don't want me, then F it. Like,
Yeah, and that sucks too because it takes you away from one of the
Yeah.
things that you love and your passion.
Exactly.
And then it creates resentments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, me and my best friend, we were like shopping at this like one specific Ross, but like it was in a like nice area because we like to just go to different cities and find different things. A lot of stores have
Yeah.
like, whatever. And literally, the security guard was following us up and down the aisle of the Ross, and I'm just like, dude, do you see this guy following us? Because mostly, like, it was a lot of Caucasian people in the store, and we were just like, just literally looking through the clothes. And so, just to be petty, I actually bought stuff, so he knew, like, I'm not trying to steal. I'm just here to buy. So it's like kind of just. Sometimes you have to be a little petty to like just prove your point, but I just feel like education can go a long way. Like why did you follow me?
It's funny you say it's petty. I don't even think it's petty. I think it's just it's proving like, yo, like it's proving yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and it sucks because you shouldn't have to.
Yeah,
But it's
right.
just like there's a lot of situations like that happen to me in stores, and it's come down to more so money. Like let's say I spend a lot of money somewhere, and they'll be like, what the heck?
Yo,
I'll be like, yo, where are you getting money, or what are you doing? Or it's always comes to something like that, or maybe the way I talk or certain things like that, and it will be the reverse. Like I'll be given the Oreo card, you know. So
for
like
job interviews too, like, oh, I didn't think you were black. And I'm
that,
like,
yep.
what's that supposed to mean?
I've been, you know, it's funny. Some of my best friends, like still to this day, they were saying like, because I came from Perry Middle. And then I went to West Broward, which is like kind of a white Spanish school, from a black middle school. And I went there, and when I went there, I had Jordans and long pants, and I just, you know, I dressed how black culture is at the time. And everybody thought I was, like, all my friends at the time, they told me like a year later, they're like, bro, I thought you were honestly like this quiet, like black dude that was just like did not like white people, and he was just did not want to talk to anyone. And then they were like, we talked to you and you were just not like that. And it just goes to show like how far appearance could go.
yeah.
Like, and I'm like, back then I looked like a mixed little Spanish black kid. I didn't look like, you know, anything that you could completely judge a book by its cover with. But
Stereotype.
it shows you how widely stereotyping is.
Yeah.
Because stereotyping at the end of the day is just generalizing.
Yep.
It's generalizing
Yeah.
what people are and what they look like and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So I'm not even against stereotypes, but it's just that's why you got to be careful with the way you dress and act and do things and
Yeah.
perceive
Mm.
yourself. You know.
So, but let me ask you this question, and
Excuse me.
and again, it's in the topic of racism. Why do you feel like you need to be careful about how you dress and stuff like that?
Because of that, just
A label.
yeah, you don't want to be as much as I like dressing baggy and having my own expression of clothing and stuff like that. I don't want people to see me in clothing and automatically think, oh, like he's up to no good. He doesn't work. He's a hoodlum.
And I get that, you know, and in some contexts, I get it more than others. Like you're not going to wear that kind of clothing to court. I get that,
100%. Yeah, exactly.
but I don't know. It's just I'm a big advocate for self-expression,
Mm-hmm.
and when I see, I'm thinking more specifically schools. Like I saw this video of this kid who had this really dope like haircut, you know, with I don't know the name of it, but he had a really cool haircut, a little black kid, and he got banned from his school or expelled or whatever because he refused to cut it out.
Oh.
I think I heard something.
His mom went on the news, was like,
Oh, it's dreads. Yeah,
this-
it's dreads.
Yeah.
It's dreads.
dreads.
It was dreads.
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
but it was cool. It was cool ultimately. But this kid, normal kid, trying to go to school, trying to learn, trying to get good grades like any other high schooler, and he was told you can't come to school because you have the haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
And-
black people that are like that. That their
Yeah.
parents will tell them you cannot grow your hair out because it makes you look
Yeah.
hood.
Right.
I know
Yeah.
them.
But
Mhm.
but that's kind of
black
where
parents.
and this is why I'm such a. This is why I don't like racism or stuff, prejudice or stereotypes.
Yep.
Because that is not a reason for that child not to go to school.
Right.
If
Not
you
a
mean to tell me he was
valid
out here bullying kids and beating them up and doing wrong stuff,
reason. Right.
that's different. But it's a haircut.
Yeah.
you
How is
know.
it distracting to
Yeah.
education?
Yeah.
He's wearing boots to school. You're telling me that he can't wear boots to school, really? And that's where I'm like, that's why this topic of racism is a topic that I'm somewhat passionate about, because at the end of the day, I shouldn't have to change a single thing about myself to be accepted in my country
Fact.
or to be
100%.
accepted in my community.
Especially a
You
free
know,
country.
Especially a free country.
We advertise
Free
ourselves as a
country.
free country, so
Free
of course
country,
not.
right.
You definitely
Like,
should.
I shouldn't be
You
afraid.
have something to say, Martine?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, back to what you were saying. Like, I don't know who said it, but I say it all the time. Like, treat the janitor the same way you would treat the
100%.
person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you see it all around. I mean, even doctors' offices will treat people with certain insurance different.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like
Exactly.
it's so. And at the end of the day, like, not to be like negative or like super.
We all go in
whatever,
the same graves.
We going to the same. That's what I was
we all
gonna
go
say.
to the same place.
And
Well,
I mean,
on
hopefully,
your beliefs
hopefully,
depending
yeah,
on
hopefully,
if you're going
But I'm
or
just
not,
saying,
No, for
eventually,
sure.
you
100%. We're all going to that ground.
Like I'm just saying, like you should treat people.
Unless you pay,
100%.
unless
And
you
you
pay.
don't know who you're gonna need.
Yeah,
like-
exactly.
You don't
on
know
your
when
journey.
you don't know when
Yes.
you're gonna fall
When
off
you
your
gonna-
ladder either.
Yes, man.
Yeah,
Some
you
people
could
may be at
up,
the top,
exactly.
top,
It could
top,
happen
top,
like
and then you
that.
just
Yeah.
and
It
all
could
those
happen like
bridges you
that.
burned, you can't get back up.
Yeah.
For
Nope.
sure.
Or you can pay, you know, instead of going to the ground, you can pay those $3,000 and get your ashes sent to space. You know, I don't know if you heard about that.
No, I have
What?
not.
Like, there's this new thing that came out that apparently you pay like thousands of dollars and you can have your ashes thrown in space.
Interesting.
As well, but that's besides the point. But yeah, Martine, I appreciate your point. You know, at the end of the day, and this is me talking from a Latino perspective, but I've always said that Latino and Black people are not too far off.
Of course.
Oh,
Like, we
I-
share a
I
lot
have
of the
two
same
Mexican
experience.
brothers. We have a lot of the same experiences.
like- I remember, so I'll share my experience, and I, when I first came to California, I came for high school. It was my sophomore year, and I'll never forget. They put me. I think I've talked about this on the podcast. They put me in an ELD class. You know, keep in mind, in Puerto Rico, I actively studied English.
Mhm.
I was fluent, and not only was I fluent, but I've never gotten a grade below an A in English in Puerto Rico.
Right.
So I get to the States, and they instantly, because they read, oh, he's Puerto Rican, ELD class, English Language Development.
Mhm.
So I go into this class, and it's a whole bunch of kids who don't know an ounce of English. And I'm over here like, why am I in this class?
What did you to make friends?
Like, what the hell?
That's literally
So
that's how it is all
I'm
the
literally
time, too.
going through this school year and I'm pissed. Like I didn't even want to go to that class anymore. And like I specifically remember talking to the like counselor being like, can I be put in a regular class, please? Because like this is not for me. They're like, no, I'm sorry. Every it's required for every person coming in from another country. They need to do ELD. And I'm like, I went the year. And this is where I come back to being petty. I got pissed. So I said, you know what? Okay, you're going to put me in here. They would give us writing assignments. I was always the first one to turn them in. A+ every single time. I was picking like so some of the harder books, like they had levels to them. I was like the lowest you can go is like level 1, 2, or 3. Most people in the class were picking 1, 2, and 3. I was picking level 6 and level 7s,
Right.
like trying to prove that I don't deserve to be in this class. Sure enough, and the year came and my teacher, and end of the first half of the year comes through and my teacher's like, why are you in this class? And I'm like, I don't know. They said I need to be here. Sure enough, the next year, my junior year, I got so fed up and I was like, I'm going to prove to them.
Right.
For my junior year, for both semesters, I got the best grade in the class.
Wow.
Because I needed to prove to them that they were wrong.
Right.
You know, granted, my senior year didn't go as good, but but the point is that I do agree with you, Abby, in that sense. Like sometimes you do need to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do need to stand up and say, you know what? I see it a lot like self-advocacy.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you got to stand up and say, you know what? I'm not going to let your label define me. I'm going to prove to you
Right.
that I can overcome, you know?
Right.
And like, it's funny because at the time I didn't see it as racist. But today, looking back at it, it was absolutely racism. You know, they judged me because of my culture, because of the color of my skin. And they said, you no speak English, so you go Spanish. And I'm like, screw you. I am fluent in English.
Right.
I can write, speak, read, give speeches, no problem, you know? And it took me a long time to be able to realize that. And not only that, but now I'm more aware of those kind of things. You know, I've talked about this guy, but there's a guy in my life who actively says racist jokes to me. You know, he's a white gentleman. And it's funny because I receive those jokes and I don't know how to react. It's like I like get mad, but I don't know what to say. But now it's funny how life works. I'm put in a situation where I'm going to have to confront this person. And I am going to have to tell him, I need you to stop doing that.
Set that boundary for sure.
Set that boundary. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation of racism to end this podcast, because that's my biggest problem with quote unquote Black History Month, Hispanic History Month. People utilize this month to celebrate, but then the rest of the year they don't care. They're hateful towards those people. It doesn't matter. And it's not just white people. That's what pisses me off. It's not just the white communities. It's the Black communities. It's the Latino communities.
To be honest, the
Asian
white
communities.
community is probably the main community trying to celebrate Black History Month.
Yeah,
They're the
so
main
like,
community
there's
trying to do it.
so much racism in the world, and people pass it off as like, oh, it's just a joke, or you're too sensitive. No, at the end of the day, racism is racism. Hate is hate. And if we really want to see change, kind of like we've been talking about this whole episode, if we really want to see that beautiful 360 all year round where we elevate every type of voice, we need to start ourselves. You know? So that's why we talked about unity. That's why we talked about how Black communities are sometimes its own, like, fighting each other. No. At the end of the day, and this is something that I firmly believe, all minority communities need to come together and start celebrating each other. Why? Because if we want something to change, we need to do it ourselves.
All
They're
communities.
not going to follow.
All communities.
Yes. Not even minority communities. I think all communities. And I think because minority, I think that's an issue sometimes.
But here's the
because that's what creates the minority.
And I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, majority communities in America.
What creates division? By dividing ourselves. The more we divide ourselves, the more we will stand divided.
I understand what you're saying,
100%.
100%. But at the same time, those divisions are not being caused by us a lot of the times. Is like you said,
But let's say
everybody wants to hang out with their own group, and nobody wants to mix and mingle. Well, guess what? Mixing and mingle is where we learn about each other.
100%.
Like there's
Yeah.
this guy I follow on YouTube, and he's very controversial because he goes to colleges
Steven Crowder.
and probably
Yeah.
he goes to colleges and
So Steven,
he
that's my
loves
boy.
to have controversial conversations with people. Sure, and then, like it gets people heated, people get mad, they throw stuff at him, whatever. But one of the things that he says that I believe full-heartedly is that if we don't have communication, if we don't talk about our differences, if we don't talk about why your point I don't agree with and my point you don't agree with, we're never going to see change. We're never going to see growth.
100%.
And that's how civil war happens. And I believe that for race as well and for ethnicity. If we don't actively choose to move forward and say, you know what, Abby, I don't have your experiences, but I want to learn.
Yeah.
I want to share those experiences with you. Boom. I'll share a perfect example. In California, when I first moved to California, I'm Puerto Rican. What's the one thing you're not going to find in California? Puerto Ricans. You're going to find Mexicans. So, one of my best friends, Christian, I love you, dude. I became close friends with him, and he taught me about the beautiful culture that is Mexican culture. And I got to experience that with him. He's going to be one of my groomsmen at my wedding.
Oh.
You see what I'm saying? Is that
Yeah.
we need to start finding those ways to connect. One of my great friends from California, we had during the whole 2020 Black Lives Matter movement, we were having heated arguments, heated to the point where I told him, I don't think we can be friends. And then I started listening to him, and I started to listen to his points, and I started being a little more open. And then he started to be more open to me. And sure, we have our disagreements, and sure, we don't agree on everything, but he's still one of my closest friends from California. We need to start doing that as people. And because I'm tired of people just joking, but it comes from a place of hate.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference. You can joke about with love. You know, you can joke about whatever, you know, like I had an Asian friend, and one of the jokes was like every time we go to his house, it always smelled really strong, like really intense food smells. And we was like, "What are you cooking today, man?" And he was like, "I don't know, man, but it's gonna be wild." and that was always one of the jokes, like, "Oh, we're going to Jay's house. It's gonna smell gross." Sure enough, but it came from a place of friendship and love, never from hate, never from wanting to disconnect. And I think we need to actively stand up and do something about it. But that's just my thoughts.
I think as the Black people too, and minorities, however you want to say, we need to lead by example too, because they are watching us, and sometimes they're like making fun of us, like, oh, they can't even, you know, unite with themselves, so how they can expect us to
I
like
hear that all the time.
respect them? Like it's leading by example too.
Yeah. So I think it is a good place to pause. If you could, I want to leave the audience with some type of encouragement, and I want it to come from you guys, if it's okay. What would be a piece? You already said education, but what would be a piece of advice that you would give to the listeners to encourage them in moving forward when elevating Black voices and talking about connections through all races?
Be open-minded.
Yeah.
For sure. Don't go into it. Don't go into it with your own opinions yet. Just be willing to listen and slow to speak. Because I feel like that's another
that's
problem.
huge.
Yeah, people are like, they want to talk, but they're not willing to listen. So just being able to just go into it with an open mind and understand that everyone is going to have different opinions. And it's okay to not agree with them, but you don't have to be disrespectful at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree with her big time. I mean, respect is a big thing. I think if you want respect, you've got to give respect. So if you want someone to respect your culture and whatever, you got to respect their culture as well. With that being said, we're all human. You shouldn't see color, and if you do, then that's always going to be an issue for you in life. That's really it. I mean, if you truly see color as like a difference in people, and you see like, oh, this person's white, this person's black, they're different, like that, like, oh, I can't hang out with this person, then you truly need to evaluate yourself, and you need to start, like Chris said, start having conversations with different people and start getting outside of your own culture, because it's probably a problem because you're so used to being around people that are only like you and or only like something that you're used to seeing. Because let's say if you go to a tribe in a random country in China or something, or in Africa, and you bring a white person, they're probably never going to see a white person. They've never seen them in their life. So it goes the same thing here. Like, if you don't give someone like context or show someone different, they're going to be a certain way. And that's just all it is. So that's why it comes down to like respect and understanding, because you have to understand that some people aren't born in Miami, of a melting pot around a bunch of different random people. Some people are born in, sorry if I'm calling like Arkansas or like a random state where it's predominantly a certain color. And when they see a certain person, it gives them a preconceived notion of who they are because of what they've seen. And that doesn't make them a bad person, but that makes them ignorant. And ignorant means lack of knowledge. And that's all it is. It comes down to a conversation. It comes down to education, and that's all it is.
Absolutely.
And that's really all you can learn from and grow from. So.
And like you said, just not being hateful, like just love. So, trying to use that the best that you can. Yeah. Everyone is not going to love us, but we can still show love. And people are going to, unfortunately, dislike us. But that doesn't mean I have to dislike that person for not liking.
That's one of the most mentioned words in the Bible is love. Right. It's for a reason.
Right.
And there's no racism in the Bible. Just like
what she said is from the Bible and from Psalms, be slow to speak and quick to listen. Like, that's true. Like, just that's what helps me, with love, because we can always do better, and no one's perfect, but we don't have to keep making the same mistakes or whatever comments that our kids can hear. Like, all of that is important, like what we do at home and in our private spaces, it should still reflect publicly.
Yeah. And like you said, it's in the Bible. It's right there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, it's take some of those principles that are in there, just put them into your life, and these racism and all that stuff won't happen. It's the reason it wasn't happening back then. And I'm sure there was racism, but it wasn't a thing where it's like, we are racist and there's a month where we need to celebrate black. It wasn't like that back then. It was their culture, this culture, this culture, this culture. They were all separated because of that's just how it was, and that's just how it's always going to be. Cultures are going to be separate.
I always I like to think of it, I like to take the anthropologist route, where they teach you in anthropology that when you're going to go out into these remote areas to study these cultures and these groups of people, the number one thing is you cannot judge, because their culture is different than yours.
Exactly.
And I love that idea, because, and I saw it with my own eyes, like I saw a documentary of this woman who went into this tribe and just to learn and ask questions, and they were doing these wild traditions and crazy things, but her job is not to judge, it's just to learn, and there's something beautiful in that. And when we can take a step back and say, I'm going to go into this conversation with an open heart, I'm going to go into this experience with an open mind. There's something beautiful about that, So if you, I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode.
Thank you.
It was a little eye-opening. I'm not going to lie to you guys. There was a lot of things we talked about where I didn't expect we were going to talk about.
No, for sure.
I'm glad we did.
I mean, there's a lot of things that we talked about. There's a lot of things I would definitely talk about more, but probably can't.
Yeah. Exactly.
We are trying to keep this episode, Again, I want to thank you both for being so open and so willing to share your perspective. I know that's not always super easy, but thank you so much for coming along. Anyways, Mykel,
thank you.
You freaking rock. I love you, dude.
I'm always unapologetically me. I'm sorry, guys,
but that's what I love about you, man.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. You know what to do. Please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified every single time we post. And if you're listening to the audio only version, please give us a 5 rating. It will help promote the podcast so much, so more people can share their stories and we can hear different perspectives and reach
And
more
let us
people.
know if you want us to bring these guests back. So make sure to comment their
Yep.
names
I would
and
love
tell
to be
us if
back.
you need them back.
Bring back Abby. Bring back Martine.
Yep.
Don't bring back Christian. Don't bring back Kayla. No, I'm kidding. We love you, Kayla.
Mykel sucks.
No, but for reals, thank you for listening, and we will see you all in the next episode next week.
right.
Bye-bye.